There's a certain kind of movie that doesn't just sit on the shelf of film history, it rattles inside it. A film that doesn't become famous because of its craft, or its performances, or even its director, but because of a rumor that grows so loud it replaces the movie itself. Snuff, released in 1975, isn't remembered for what it actually is, but for what people feared it might be. A film that walked into theaters like a quiet, low-budget exploitation picture, and walked out as a cultural urban legend that terrified an entire generation. Our story doesn't begin with fame. It begins with a forgotten B-movie that barely had a pulse. What later became Snuff was originally shot years earlier under a different title, a different narrative, and with very little intention of ever shocking the world. The original film was just another exploitation flick made in Argentina. The kind of movie produced fast, cheaply, and without much expectation. Most films like this never make it past drive-in theaters. They fade, disappear, become half-remembered trivia. But this one was about to be resurrected in a way no one saw coming. By the mid-70s, America was obsessed with the idea of hidden danger. Cults, crime waves, rumors of underground films that showed things the human eye was never meant to see. A moral panic was already simmering. All it needed was a spark, and that spark arrived when a group of opportunistic producers bought the unused Argentinian footage and decided to sell it with a twist. Their idea was simple: take the old film, tack on a new ending, and market the entire thing as something forbidden, something real. And that's where Snuff mutated from a forgotten exploitation movie into a monster of pure marketing chaos. The producers created an advertisement campaign built entirely on suggestion, innuendo, and fear, whispering to crowds that the ending wasn't staged, that what happened in the final minutes was not scripted, that cameras had captured something no film crew should ever witness. They never said it outright, of course. They didn't have to. The rumor spread faster than the truth ever could. Suddenly, the movie no one cared about became the movie everyone whispered about. Lines formed outside grindhouse theaters, not because people want to see a great film, but because they wanted to confront the taboo, to find out whether the rumors were real, because there's something unnervingly human about wanting to peek into forbidden territory. The allure of danger works like gravity, silent but impossible to resist. But the real shock didn't happen inside the theater. It happened outside. Because as the movie spread through major cities, protests followed. Journalists began publishing heated articles. Activists condemned the film, and authorities were pressured to intervene. Theaters were surrounded by demonstrators demanding it be shut down. Police forces were dispatched just to manage the crowds, and the producers, watching it all unfold, didn't stop the panic. They poured gasoline on it. They placed police warning posters in front of cinemas. They hired actors to pretend to be investigators. They fed the illusion with every trick in the exploitation playbook. And it worked. The myth became larger than the movie itself. People who never watched it became convinced they knew what it contained. Parents warned their children. Clergy denounced it publicly. Moral watchdog groups campaigned to have it banned. In reality, the film's content, stripped of the rumor, was nothing more than a cheaply made exploitation story with a staged shock ending filmed months later in a small studio. But perception is more powerful than truth. And by the time the real facts surfaced, Snuff had already carved its place in cultural memory as the movie that supposedly went beyond fiction. What really made the situation explode was timing. The world was already on edge. The Manson murders had left deep cultural scars. News reports were filled with rising crime rates. Urban legends about underground films were spreading through magazines and late-night radio shows. People were primed to believe the worst, and snuff became the symbol, the lightning rod, for every fear society couldn't name out loud. The irony is that the film itself contains nothing that remotely aligns with the legend surrounding it. There is no underground network, no hidden footage, no reality bleeding into the frame. But because people believed the marketing, the movie became something psychological, a collective hallucination where imagination filled in the blank spaces. The controversy grew so intense that some cities banned the film outright. Court battles erupted over whether it should be screened. Politicians used it as fuel in debates about censorship and obscenity. Newspapers published headlines that made the situation even wilder. All this for a film that, under normal circumstances, would have been forgotten within a year. And this is where Snuff becomes more than a movie. It becomes a lesson in how fear travels, how rumors evolve into truth when repeated enough times, how marketing can manipulate an entire audience into believing they're watching something forbidden, even when the reality is far less dramatic. It reveals a dark side of cinema, that sometimes the most powerful part of a film isn't what's shown on screen. It's what people think they're seeing. Decades later, Snuff is still talked about not because of its artistic quality, but because of the cultural earthquake it caused. Film scholars dissect it as a bizarre experiment in cinematic psychology, proof that a myth can overshadow the art itself, and that audiences sometimes bring more fear into the theater than the movie does. Today, with the internet constantly fueling new rumors and conspiracy theories, Snuff feels strangely prophetic, a reminder of how easily the public can be manipulated, how the line between curiosity and anxiety can blur, and how fear, once unleashed, becomes almost impossible to contain. In the end, Snuff remains a rare kind of artifact, a film that succeeded not because of what it showed, but because of what people believed it showed. A cinematic ghost story where the real power lives in the imagination of the audience. And maybe that's why the legend still survives. Because in a world filled with rumors, illusions, and half-truths, sometimes the scariest movie is the one created inside our own.